What's going on, guys? It's Greg Styes, and today we're going to try and answer a question I've been seeing a lot in our comments, and that is, how does D3 stack up with D1? Can D3 teams compete with D1? How does that go across levels? And I even saw that question asked about MCLA. Where does MCLA stack up on Division 1, 2, 3 level? But first, before we get into it, highlights are coming up. We're deep into the content season. Lacrosse season is here, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 200,000 followers this year. Make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned to everything we have going on this year. High school highlights are coming soon, which I know you guys love. So let's get into answering this question. Can D3 compete with D1? There's been more examples of D3 teams playing D1 teams in the last couple of years. That's given us a little bit of reference of how that might look. But I think in general, the very best D3 teams and players can easily compete with mid to high level Division 1 teams and players. So a couple of examples to examine and take a look at. In 2021, Cabrini, who is a D3 team who has won the national championship in recent years, played UPenn because UPenn's season in the Ivy League was canceled. UPenn in 2019 was a top 5 Division 1 team, and they went and played Division 3 Cabrini, a much smaller school. And the game was actually pretty good. Through the first quarter, first half, it was pretty tight. Cabrini had some really great goals. You could see clearly that the very best players on Cabrini could beat their men. I think where UPenn and most big time high level Division 1 teams are going to win is number 1, size and speed. They just tend to be bigger and faster and more developed athletes. And number 2 is depth. So while the top players at Cabrini could really compete, they didn't have the depth all the way down the roster and the depth chart, whereas UPenn probably had 10, 15 guys that are all as good as the top players on Cabrini. And so another example of D1 versus D3 was when Dartmouth played Tufts. Tufts obviously one of the best Division 3 teams in the country, year in, year out. Dartmouth, a little bit more of a mid-level team. As you can see through the highlights, Tufts actually handled Dartmouth really easily. So you can see the best D3 team playing against a D1 team. Granted, they had their season canceled. They weren't practicing quite as much, but the D3 team handled the D1 team because it was a slightly lower D1 team. So I think that great D3 teams like Salisbury, Tufts, RIT, these perennial powerhouses, could easily compete with mid-level D1 schools. And so we can also look at some transfer stories. One this year that's really in the news is Max Walbaum. He was a Tufts player, 100-goal scorer, transfers for his grad year to Jacksonville, and is absolutely tearing up the best defenses in the country. Against Jacksonville, had 2 or 3 goals, a huge upset against Duke. He had 4 goals, so he's proving that as one of the best players from D3, he can easily take that next step up and compete in the D1 level. Another example of a transfer is Kevin Rogers. He was the D3 player of the year from Lynchburg, transferred to High Point, scored over 40 goals in a season, was the second leading point scorer on the team, tore up some of the best defenses. High Point plays a really tough schedule with teams like UNC and Duke consistently, and he proved that he can compete, not only compete, excel against these defenses. Those are 2 examples of players who come out of D3 and are able to compete at a very high level in D1. So I think to put a conclusion on this, in D3, and you can see it in the pros, there's been a number of Division 3 pros, one of which Mike Simon out of Stevenson we signed. He won 6 championships at the pro level. So you can see that there's D3 players who can compete all the way up to the D1 level, and there's also D3 teams that can compete at the D1 level. I think the big difference is that depth. So I'd love to see more D3 to D1 comparisons, more scrimmages, more matchups, because I think they're a lot of fun to watch. So make sure you leave your comments down below of what you think. If there's any D3 players or D3, D1 highlights that we should put together. Please, if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't, and have a great day.